Achint Soni works hard and plays hard. His youth and childhood were filled with experiences that few other young people are fortunate enough to have. As a child, he experienced the expansiveness of art forms like theatre and puppetry. He enjoys and writes poetry, has a deep interest in music, and he sings with a full throated, beautiful voice, much appreciated by his listeners. Although he is the country manager in India for the University of Sheffield, UK, as well as a senior regional advisor for the Newcastle University, UK, that is not what defines him. We bring to you a very engrossing conversation with him about how all his experiences have contributed towards making him the man that he is today, living his life as fully as he can, traveling all over the world just because he can. Enjoy. So you were performing the play
in the plaza, yeah,
center of
the center of
Chandigarh.
Chandigarh, and you're bound to meet people from your community and other communities. But I think as a 10, 12-year-old kid, I wasn't always very happy about that because the theatre side of it was very removed from my school side of it. And having to run into people or classmates, looking at one of their classmates on the floor in the middle of...
You as a person did not give the dirty treatment to, you know, I mean,
to
you
other
were a
kids, you mean?
kinder, yeah, you were a kinder person because you'd experienced that.
Yeah, but I think it's I'm not sure that I was always very kind because as a growing teenager, you're manipulating your way through school, you're playing politics as much as you can, and it's the norm. It's like, when you go to they say that when you go to jail, the first thing you should do is pick on the weakest person, because that's how...
Of course.
Anyone, you cannot be happy all the time. But the idea of contentment is more important, in terms of not that you're always content with where you are. You're still striving to look at different things and reach different places. But there isn't a struggle around it.
Yeah, and that's what you just said. You'll figure it out.
Exactly.
The confidence in yourself
is...
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast, Theatre of Joy. Today, I'm honored to have Achint Soni, and it's going to be interesting, I think. Achint is a young man who has had a very checkered kind of an experiences in his life. He has been a part of many different worlds apart from each other. And so, let's dive into it. Achint?
Hello.
Hello. So, can you tell us about a life-changing experience?
Wow.
In your life, yeah.
I think I've had a few. I think being uprooted very early on as a child from where we used to live in Hyderabad and moving to Chandigarh. I think I was 7 or 8 probably when we moved here.
So moved from a city to a city.
To a city. Changing of schools, changing of the entire environment. Looking at even at that young age, looking at things from a very different perspective straight away. Not so much out of choice, but more out of it being the need of the hour. Yeah, I would say that was probably one of the earliest life-changing experiences.
And what was different about Hyderabad and Chandigarh for you?
I think there was a lot more possibility in Chandigarh. There was a lot more, in the sense that there was a lot more happening in my life. There was, of course, family upheaval, financial upheaval. But also a much larger community in Chandigarh than we did have in Hyderabad. and everything that brought along was interesting, but also challenging as a child. I think on reflection, I see the challenges that existed more. As a child, I don't think I did grasp all of what was going on. But it was definitely, moving away from dad and coming all the way here, having to see him once, maybe in 3 months or something of that sort. All of that were definitely challenges. Didn't think of it in as nuanced terms as I do now. But yeah, it was definitely a challenge.
I know children don't have much choice.
Yeah.
Very early on.
Yes.
Yes.
So we got.
But I think children also, they tend to grasp whatever possibilities, open up for them in a newer space.
Definitely. I think it's that was part of it, because there were things that were happening in Chandigarh that I was automatically a part of. So there wasn't a lot of choice there.
There too.
But I think that opened up a different way of looking at things from a very young age. Because it's also very new for me in terms of how, for example, coming in, and I think within the first summer we were in our first theatre workshop, and it was something I had never done before. But as a very mischievous and curious kid, it gave me the license to misbehave openly in front of adults.
Misbehave. Now that's a loaded word.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, maybe misbehavior is not misbehavior.
Yeah.
It is just what the adults around you think is.
In a particular context, that would be considered misbehavior. But what you would end up doing there was completely licensed here, so you could go crazy. And I think it was fun, but I think it also, over the years, kind of made me question a lot of things that happened in different ways. Both, while I was
that happened in the theatre workshops.
Well, definitely within the theatre workshops, but also outside, in terms of, for example, we were talking about misbehavior and how different realms or different areas of where you have to be present demand or look at you very differently. So you
or define misbehavior differently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Define misbehavior, define being kind, define what is good or bad, what's right or wrong, in a very different way. And then I think one way that I definitely feel like I had that opportunity is I had the perspective of looking at it in different ways. Over time, at the time, I think, I used to be quite embarrassed about what I was doing outside the theatre workshop. Within that, safe space, it was all right. But outside that, I would, as a kid, always feel like, people would judge me.
Yeah, and what you're saying brings to me that when a lot of things are defined as misbehavior in a certain space, like for example, school, you don't have much space to
wiggle room, yes.
be. You don't have much wiggle room. Yeah, that's a good one. And but in a space where you have license, you have, you can try yourself out, and the consequences are not going to be so harsh.
Yeah.
Even if you do misbehave in terms of that space. So we are talking about school and theatre.
Yeah, and I think that apart from everything else that was happening in life, I took the liberty of taking that license to school and would usually end up being suspended quite often because I was, as you would say, very
because you didn't know that the world is different from that safe space and to the unsafe space. I think the space in a school is very unsafe for kids.
I'd agree, yes, definitely. Especially for kids who don't fit the norm, where you're not always the A grader or not always the teacher's pet, or good at everything you do, because probably you're not interested in everything that happens in school. But I think, that brings its challenges. It's it can be quite unsafe, definitely. Also in terms of, bullying and growing up with older students in school.
And I feel the experiences in a school kind of stay with you for a while until you start trying to unwind them by therapy and by all kinds of stuff. Because when a space is unsafe, what really happens is that you don't trust the adults around you.
Yeah.
Don't trust normal processes of life or
Yeah.
something.
I think in some ways it makes you more street smart and not look at things at face value always, which, to be very fair, is
Or not being a pink cloud.
Yeah, which I think, to be very fair, is a very necessary skill to survive in this country. You've got to you can't look at the world with rosy eyes all the time. There's a lot involved in it, and I think it gives you that the grit to be able to deal with a lot of it. But it's unfair to a lot of kids that you have to deal with it very early on.
Yeah, and also that I feel that you as a person did not give the dirty treatment to I mean,
To
you
other
were a
kids,
kinder, you were a kinder person because you'd experienced that.
Yeah, but I think it's I'm not sure that I was always very kind, because as a growing teenager, you're manipulating your way through school, you're playing politics as much as you can, and it's the norm. It's like, when you go to they say that when you go to jail, the first thing you should do is pick on the weakest person, because that's how people won't mess with you.
Yes.
So I think that's also part of surviving school in a rough environment, definitely.
Yeah.
Is you've got to maneuver areas where you can do it. So I wouldn't say I was always kind as a kid, but I'd say relatively, probably. Yeah. I definitely had challenges with that.
So talk about what was life-changing about the theatre that you did as a child.
You and I were having this conversation a couple of days ago, where I was talking about how there was one particular time where we were doing one of our performances of a particular play in the plaza in Sector 17, and while we were performing, we're all writhing on the floor, moving around.
So that's the main area in Chandigarh, which the architect Le Corbusier actually created so that when you're in that area, the center of Chandigarh, you're bound to meet, and you will meet as a community, a lot of people that you know in other areas. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about right now.
Yes.
Yes. So you were performing the play in
the plaza, yeah.
Center of Chandigarh.
Center of Chandigarh. And you're bound to meet people from your community and other communities. But I think as a 10, 12-year-old kid, I wasn't always very happy about that, because the theatre side of it was very removed from my school side of it. And having to run into people or classmates, looking at one of their classmates on the floor in the middle of Chandigarh, just, doing something really weird that they would, at least that's how they would put it, used to be very embarrassing. And I'd like, I definitely thought I could avoid school for a few days after that. But I guess but I think a lot of what theatre did for me is something I realized only in retrospect, when I started thinking about what had happened. As a kid, I was the youngest person.
You were thrown into it.
I was pretty much thrown into it, and it was just something we did. So, and I think I found it harder to explain it to other people, so I used to keep it away from everybody and be like, karte hain kuch,
So, as a kid, when you were performing in Sector 17,
yeah,
there were your mother was there, and there your, other relatives and other younger cousins,
yeah.
And other people who were actually family.
Yeah.
So, how was that?
And and I think that's the big that was the big challenge, because that was definitely a safe space, whether it was family, extended family, people we used to play with all the time. But I think as a child, I found it very difficult to explain that in a different area. It was it was a lot of fun while I was there. Um, it gave me. It was new. It was interesting in the sense that it was not something I could do anywhere else. So that made it fun. I remember, as a child when we went to Pakistan to perform. I remember being the star of the school, not because they knew what I was going for, but because I was going to Pakistan. It's like, how does that happen? But yeah, having to come back and do that,
the whole routines.
Yeah, within the school became even more challenging because it was not fun anymore.
But I think you might have, made a few of your classmates or schoolmates think that there's another way of being also.
I think I used to keep it very
close.
Yeah. There's only a couple of people. So I remember there was a friend of mine whose father was a director in Punjabi movies. And he and I were the only ones who could talk about it. But his theatre was very, we perform in a theatre, whereas we used to perform on the street. So it was that side of it also.
Our theatre was weirder.
Yeah, I think our theatre was definitely weirder. But I think it was, because it wasn't as much by the book as some, like as a play you would, from a different playwright that you would perform within a theatre, which of course we've also done. But this was a bit more crazy, if you know what I mean. Like, you had the opportunity to do whatever. You could improvise right there. I remember so many times I've forgotten lines and just made up stuff, as you go along.
Which was what was the theatre
about?
Exactly.
Yeah, which is what it was about. And, but I think that part of it gives you the confidence to kind of deal with situations. I think I'm a very good reader of character because of that. Because I can, it's like a knob. I can turn on or turn off the crazy whenever I need it. And it makes social interactions very interesting, because not everyone...
This is interesting. Yeah. Turn on and turn off the crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Because I've realized that your inhibitions, my inhibitions at least, have through theatre went down quite a bit. So in certain areas, I could play around with that and be the weird person in a room, or be the more social person in a room, or the day I wanted to be the most quiet person in a room. And you could literally play these characters because they're all a part of you, right? But I think,
and you could improvise, which you learned.
Yeah, and I think that really helped in figuring out how to read people in a very interesting way, because how people respond to these different situations really tells you a lot about, of course, yourself, but also a lot about how
others. And I'm thinking that there are many kids who know that the groove, who buy it,
yes,
and who, even if they do try to think beyond it for some time, but the fear is too much. The fear of getting off the groove is too much. Because you're told that your life will be finished, you'll be begging in the street.
Yeah, it remains a dream. I think it's something you'd want to do, but it's too unrealistic. So you stay in
the group.
The rat race.
And how has that helped you otherwise in life? Knowing that there's a lot beyond the groove, and that you've been there, done that.
I think a lot of choices I made were not necessarily rebellious in that sense, but also looking at many different possibilities and looking at whether I'd be happy and interested in pursuing a particular path. It always reminds me of Robert Frost's, the road less traveled by. And I definitely think for a lot of the choices that has made all the difference. Whether it be going to a very interesting boarding school.
Yes.
You know,
And staying there
for surviving there for about 4 years, because of course it came with its challenges.
Yeah.
But you know, for the better, I think, because the kind of opportunities, the kind of knowledge, the kind of understanding that that place gave me, of course, for the time
And
that
the
I was
friends
there.
and the
And the
community.
friends, yes, the community, the friends, some of whom have been for life. Yeah, I don't think I would have gotten in a more conventional place where I was struggling.
So
School time.
the groove was again lot of displacement there because you went to a very different school.
Yeah.
Yeah, which did not have sit down classes and discipline and yeah,
in its own way, but
yeah.
it had a lot of possibility.
Mm.
So you know, whether it be learning about academia or vocational stuff, more importance on, you know, being a bit more introspective.
Yeah, it was one-on-one,
Yeah,
right?
it was quite one-on-one, yes, definitely. And very vertical. So your interaction was not just with your classmates, but with the entire school
all ages,
and all
yeah.
ages, yeah.
And that one-on-one told you a lot more about yourself, so that you didn't have to, you know, merge into the crowd.
Yes, and I think it gave me, you know, the confidence to kind of take a year and a half out before I chose what I wanted to study. And I laugh when I tell a lot of kids or a lot of people I meet that I did engineering, which makes me one of the many Indian kids who do it.
Who made it?
Yeah, but I'm one of the very few people I've met who did that out of their own choice, instead of, you know, your parents or someone in society telling you. I took a year and a half out, worked, traveled a lot, and, you know, really thought about whether this was something I wanted to do. And I used to love it, so I ended up doing it, and it was another incredible experience. And I realized I can do both sides of it, because for a long time it felt like it was either or, but it really wasn't. I could, you know, merge two very different worlds together.
And I don't know. Again, I have an interesting point of view that maybe what all you experience as your schooling, or, you know, the theatre being part of your education, that really helped you to be on both sides.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
So it's not what the adults tell us, ki if you take the road less travel, or if you're weirder, you're doomed and you'll be begging in the
Not
street.
at all.
Or like we were told ki bhande manjoge.
I think no, definitely, because it's theater, you know, puppetry, all of that opened up looking at things in a non-serious way, because everything doesn't have to be this serious, but also exploring so much more that's out there. So, you know, whether it was you know, every new thing that used to come up, we'd be like, okay, let's try it out. Like rowing, for example, we used to row in school, and it just happened on a one evening conversation after a cricket match, like, you know, we row here, would you guys like to join? We were like, yeah. हम गिरे मेरे ख्याल 6-8 बार पानी में, but it was, you know, it was an incredible experience.
Also, I think it gave you the freedom to choose to how you would like to define seriousness.
How, and I think not just seriousness. I think it gave me the freedom to choose what I want, how I want it.
What are your own terms?
On my own terms, and even if not always on my own terms, the freedom to make the choice of whether I'd like a particular situation in my life or not so.
And the ease in choosing it.
Lots of ease in choosing it.
No
Yes.
no fear of consequences.
Because I think it gave me the confidence ki, like, you know, you were saying ki doom and gloom ki tum to nahi hoga tumhare se kuch bhi if you take a different route, ki ho jata hai. कुछ ना कुछ तो हो ही जाएगा.
Of course.
We'll figure it out. You know,
Of course.
इतना confidence था that whatever happens, we'll manage to work our way around it.
Around it also, and I mean, if you think about this, the journey being more important than getting anywhere, the journey has to be fun, right?
True, very true. If it's not, then it's not a good one. Then you have to change your journey. Yeah. No, definitely. I was having this conversation the other day with someone about how we're all looking at happiness all the time. But I think that's always momentary.
Of course.
Anyone, you cannot be happy all the time. But the idea of contentment is more important in terms of not that you're always content with where you are. You're still striving to look at different things and reach different places. But there isn't a struggle around it.
Yeah, and that's what you just said. You'll figure it out.
Exactly.
The confidence in yourself
is definitely important.
Happiness cannot be there all the time, and so sadness also cannot be there all the time.
Yeah. And I think they're both necessary. Apart from all the other ones. That's part of life. Yeah.
That's a huge, wonderful, bubbling Maya.
Yeah. True. It's all, of course. You can't control.
A part of
Yes.
Control it. You can play with it.
Exactly.
Control for what?
Yeah.
If you're not going anywhere.
I think that's the struggle, because for most of us, it's harder to play with it, and I think theatre makes it, or at least made it easier for me to play with these things. So whether it's a situation I'm not happy in, or a situation I'm struggling with, in terms of what other possibility exists, it's about looking at that.
Yeah, possibilities are such an amazing thing, no?
Yeah, because
you can see possibilities everywhere, rather than, of course, you have to shrink into whatever box people want to put you in.
And that's always been hard. Shrinking in and fitting into a box has always been hard.
Yeah.
In any situation.
But, an alternative life in the multiverse would have been your life.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably would have been okay with it. If
also,
I hadn't seen.
Yeah, and being sad all the time.
Yeah.
True. So, now what?
Well, there's a lot happening. I think part of the reason I'm interested in being an entrepreneur is the opportunity to play with things, and I think that comes from, again, exploring new ideas and possibilities. And that's the journey I'm on.
And so you're a business.
I do, amongst many other things. I primarily work in student recruitment and in business development, but I also run a little consultancy for small businesses, which is a part of my work that I really, really enjoy, because it's working with different people. Actually, both sides, whether it's student recruitment or this, you meet young people, you meet people from all over, from different walks of life, and I think at the heart of it, what I really enjoy are the conversations, because it's very interesting to meet people, not just in this country but around the world, from very, very different walks of life, and I think that I always find that mesmerizing, because you can always, it gives you a very different point of view on every little thing. Is I remember this when I was in university. One of the most exciting things for me was to see how different people from different parts of the world approach a problem. So if you look at, like, for example, a person from South Asia or India, हमारे में जुगाड़ है. So every problem you look at it, and it's frugal innovation, right? So it's the easiest tools you have at your disposal.
So jugaad and frugal innovation. Oh, frugal innovation is a word I've heard for the
But
first time.
it's literally the translation of jugaad because you can't translate it any other
I
way.
know.
Because it's, you know,
Jugaad is like, okay, this problem, let's see what is here that I can use
to fix it.
to, yeah.
Because that's also cultural.
Mm.
Because we, you know, as a society, have not always had access to all the tools
Yeah.
that you would see in other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So how do you figure this out with whatever you can do? Whereas if you look at a German kid, A plus B equals C, and it's brilliant. Their solutions work. They're excellent. But it's amazing to see how different people arrive at solutions.
Yeah, yeah.
Based on, you know, cultural understanding of what problems look like. It's very fascinating.
What playground they grew up in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the buzz I hear is that increasingly in business transactions and business work,
Yeah.
you know, you need improvisation. You need to take risks.
Without a doubt.
Which is, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And improvisation is jugaad.
Totally.
So, I think Indians are going to be all over the world.
I think we're already there.
We're already there. But we have solutions that a lot others don't.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's very fascinating because even if you look at the Japanese, the process is very important. और I don't think Hindustan में किसी को फर्क पड़ता है process. like काम होना चाहिए.
कान ऐसे भी तो ऐसे भी.
Yeah, और मतलब even within India, people look at problems very differently. So of course there's a lot of background to it in terms of what part of the country you're from, what economic background you come from, what social background you come from, your access to opportunity and your access to different tools. But it's so fascinating because it's, you know, everyone's doing something very interesting and they've managed to wiggle their way and find out, or figure out rather, what they can achieve with that. But I think in my particular case, I think theatre made that very easy. Trying to take things from different areas and see how I can fit that in my life. But it's quite interesting.
Yes, it is. And it's a beautiful world to play in.
Oh, definitely.
And I mean, the possibilities are endless if only you believe that in yourself and you believe that there's always a possibility.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Something will show up. Something shows up always.
I think that's also my love for travel. Because you know, you look at the world very differently. Well, obviously, because you're in a different place, but it opens up so much more for you. Just seeing how things work in different parts of the world. I remember I was looking at a theatre performance in England once, and it was an all-female cast playing Pride and Prejudice.
Oh,
but it was one of the most fascinating plays I've ever seen because while they were basically in the play, doing the play, they were making fun of the play. It was an incredible show. Really, really funny, but also, you know, the basis of questioning what we thought of as a classic, what we thought of as the entire idea of a particular role and who gets to play it, and how you can play with that completely. You just have to turn it on its head. There's so much to do.
So much to do. Achha, tell me, what would we? Well, that's our time now. But tell me, is there something you'd like to tell the young people who are watching this, or the older people, the young at heart, the old but young?
That's a good question. I would say always explore. It's very easy to say no, but it doesn't take much to explore any opportunity. You can always decide later whether you want to go with it or not. Like, for example, in my life today, I don't get to do a lot of theatre on a stage. But I think I'm doing a lot of theatre in my life on a daily basis.
Life is a stage.
Very much so. I get to play different characters. I get to meet different characters. I get to have very engaging conversations. You and I always have engaging conversations. And I think that's all part of it. It's not just on stage, or in our case, at the Plaza in 70. There's a lot more. There's a lot more out there in the world where you can perform. And I think that is in a positive way, because when you a lot of people think that when you're talking about different characters within you, that's looking at it
That's being dishonest.
But I think we all have multiple characters within us.
Of
The way we
course.
interact with our parents or our grandparents, very different from the way you interact with your friends. That is a different character. There's a different side to you, and it just comes out as different characters.
And the multiverse is within us if we would allow it
Yeah,
to be.
and there's nothing wrong with it.
There's nothing wrong
It's
with
beautiful.
it. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Achint. It was such a wonderful conversation,
Yes.
as always. Great, great. Wow, wow, wow. Thank you.